Hello, everybody, and welcome to TeacherCast. My name is Jeff Bradbury, and welcome to the next episode of Educational Podcasting Today, the podcast that helps you not only learn how to create an amazing educational podcast, but also teaches you a little thing about web design. And welcome to 2017. We have a great program for you today. Today, we're going to be talking all about a recent post that just came out on TeacherCast called The First 3.5 Things I Do Before Starting a New Website Project. Hope you enjoy this episode because recently I had a lot of people asking me these questions about websites, web designs. How do you start? What's the best application for doing that? And today we're going to be talking all about the steps that you should take before diving into your website project. If you're out there on Facebook Live, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be trying some new things in 2017. Of course, we have our live tech educator podcast each and every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be starting up in a few weeks, and we're going to be trying some new things on YouTube and, of course, on Facebook Live. So if you're out there watching our video broadcast, check us out. We got some great things going on for us. So let's take a little bit of time to talk today about websites. Should you have one? Well, of course, the answer is going to be yes. Well, what platform should you build it on? Well, we'll get into that a little bit, but it really depends on asking yourself a few questions. What type of content should you be using? What is your audience? How often are you going to be updating this content? There's a lot of questions that we're certainly going to be jumping into today. There's, of course, several great ways that you can reach out to us and be a part of each and every show. We love it when you find us on Twitter at TeacherCast. And any of these questions, you can always leave us a voice message over at teachercast.net/voicemail. Many of these shows that we're doing in 17 came directly from email correspondence or voicemails that we got. So leave us a voicemail over at teachercast.net/voicemail. Of course, you can email us over at feedback@teachercast.net. In case you haven't checked out the live show tonight, all of our stuff is going to be archived audio and video, as it is for all of our shows over on teachercast.net/audio and teachercast.net/video. So let's just kind of dive in here. Let's say that you're out there looking to start a website project, or maybe that you have a website currently that you're looking to redesign. Now, I hear this constantly. This phrase comes up of, well, this should not be a very big project, and that's usually the first sign that it's going to be a very big project. I've recently taken on a few clients, a few important clients, and they always start with, this is a very, very easy website project. And any website project takes a lot of planning, let's just say. And so today's show is going to be all about planning. We're not going to talk a lot about diving in. We're certainly going to use that as these podcasts progress. But essentially, we're going to be looking at the 3 things that I always do before I actually open up a web browser, or in some cases, install the website platform itself. So we're going to be taking a look at those things today. So why is it important to be planning out your website? Well, it's easy. It's a lot easier to put stuff on paper rather than sit there in front of your website screen. I recently was working with my school district on their brand new Google Sites, and I would think to say that probably by now I've done over 1,000 of those new Google Sites, and I got to tell you, I love them. But there's a lot of limitations to that, and it really comes down to what your audience is. So certainly taking a time to look at the project and identify your audience is one of the most important things that you can do. I want to throw out a few questions that I always ask myself as we do this. Number one, of course, is who is your audience? Is your audience teachers? Is your audience business people? Is it a community? Is your audience mobile friendly? Now, recently, I did a website that was for my local community. Now, my local community up here in North Jersey isn't the most tech savvy community. Now, that's not a bad thing. That's just the way that the community is. So we didn't plan on doing a website with a ton of bells and whistles to it. On the other hand, we just got done redesigning our staff portal for my school district, and that thing is totally mobile friendly. It's also a site that teachers who may not be adept into really searching for blogs and blogging content can look at. That's certainly a different platform than when I'm building TeacherCast, which is for an educational community that wants to focus more on attracting businesses like ed tech startups who are really, really tech savvy. And of course, that's a little bit different than my personal blog, which is jeffreybradbury.com, where I keep all of my resumes and my professional development. These are 4 different sites which are completely different, and it all comes down to who is your audience. So there's a lot of things in there that we're going to be looking at with who's your audience. What kind of device is your audience going to be using? These are all important questions. Here's another one. How will they be accessing the website? Again, this kind of goes back to who your audience is, but in a case like my local community center, and I want to pull that up for those who are watching the video broadcast here on Facebook, this is a fantastic website that we put together for our local community. And again, the majority of the people that are going to be looking at this website might not be the most computer friendly. They might be over 55 years old. So I designed this website with the help of the community, keeping in mind that the people who are going to be looking at this needed a very easy navigation. And that's exactly what we did here. There's not a lot of options. And so far, it has been fantastic. We've had this site up for over a year now, and the community's really, really revolved around it, and it's been very, very good for our local community center. You can see here we've got a very basic heading, we've got some social stuff, and we really designed this around 2 things. Number 1, we designed it around Facebook because that's where our community is, and number 2, we're designing it around email because that's the type of communication that we have with our staff. So lots of great things on this website. And again, where is the content going to be when your audience reaches it? When I'm looking over here at TeacherCast, for instance, we're looking at a site that is going to be mobile friendly. Most of the people that might be looking at this might be coming from Twitter. They might be on their Twitter feed, seeing something, clicking on it, and they're going to be mobile friendly. They're going to be needing a place where this looks good on mobile. So if you have any questions about checking out the audience, please reach out to us, feedback@teachercast.net. I would love to share some of those thoughts and some of those connections with you guys. So a couple of questions on there. Let me throw a few more questions at you as we're going through here. This is probably one of the biggest ones. What do you want your audience to do when they first visit their website? Now, I want to bring up my jeffreybradbury.com site here for one very important reason. There's hardly any content on this front page, but it gives a very clear indication of who I am, what I do, some of the awards I've had, and some of the other neat things that are going on here. But what I really want you to do when you come to this website, and it works on a desktop and it works mobile friendly, is I want you to click right in the middle of this page here. And this was all done by design before I even started designing the page. So for those of you listening on the audio show, the front of the home page is basically my header, my navigation, and a photo of me doing my recent TEDx talk. And that's it. When you click on the picture, then an entire bottom of the page comes up with I am a digital innovator, work with me about my presentation, some stuff about TeacherCast, and then as I go down the page, I've got some of my testimonials, as of course, links to the podcast. So I created this page with the idea that I want you to click into it. I want this to be interactive. I want this to be touch friendly. So there's a lot of reasons for doing it like this. And so again, it all comes back down to what do you want your audience to do when they first are looking at your stuff? And, really, the last question I always ask myself is how often will you be posting content? Many people set up a blog. If you're looking at the front page of TeacherCast.net, it is a blog format. You can tell that I've got an active amount of content coming out. I want to have the dates up. In a sense, like the Family Center page that we talked about earlier, there is not a blog on the front page. You actually have to click in to find the blog because they're not an organization that's going to be posting every day. And if you're posting often, you want to showcase that content. But if you're not posting often, you don't want to be sharing that you're not posting content often. You always want to keep your website fresh. And if not, hide the fact that you're not doing it. So step 1, we're going to be deciphering and identifying their audience and seeing what we've got and seeing who's going to be on there. And of course, there's a lot more questions that we ask ourselves that while we're doing this. But generally, when I'm working with clients And generally, when I'm building something for my own projects, these are some of the basic questions. Who's your audience? How will they be accessing it? What do I want them to do? And then how often is the content coming? So the second question here, the second step in this process is to identify our platform. Now, I got to tell you, I'm a WordPress fan. I do a lot of WordPress work. TeacherCast is WordPress. Every site that we were talking about so far is done on WordPress. However, it's not the best platform for everybody. For instance, let's take a look at you. Maybe you're a teacher and you're creating a website for your class. Well, Google Sites just released a brand new version of Google Sites. It is amazing for teachers that want an easy way to create content, include your Google Apps or G Suite content on there, and create a nice place for your students and your parents to find curricular work. It is great. If you don't need a blog, it's a great place to go. There's, of course, other great sites like Weebly, Wix, that have amazing reputations and great content. But what happens if you want to be search engine friendly? What happens if you want to have a blog? What happens if you want to have a lot of content spread across many different categories? Well, that's why I choose WordPress. Recently, WordPress made an announcement that I believe they're 23, 25, I think it might even be as high as 29% of the entire internet. And that's a big number. I recently was talking to somebody tonight even who's building their brand new site in Joomla. And I think that's a great idea, but I have to ask how many people are building in Joomla. And I know the answer. It's less than 2%, which then translates into what kind of support do you get for that website? What kind of plugins do you get for that website? And you can see why I choose WordPress. Not only is it the most popular content management system or CMS out there, but it's so easy for me to completely create the website that's in my head. And it's taken me a long time to, really, really sink my teeth into this, but it is a spot where if I'm working with a client, I can easily create something and hand it off to them. Or if I'm creating something for myself, I can really, really dig in with the right set of tools and make an amazing website. So identifying the platform is great. Most people ask the question wrong. They ask, well, what should I use? Or what theme should I use? Or how does this work? It really comes down to what are your goals. If you're creating a very easy website, you don't need to go to WordPress. You don't need to do hosting. You don't need to do all these things. I'm a big fan of WordPress.com. I'm also a big fan of EduBlogs. I'm also a big fan of Blogger. There's a lot of different ways that you can do online free content management systems. You don't always have to dive into what's called WordPress.org, where you have to get a hosting and plugins and all this other mess. So lots of things to do on there. If you have any questions about how to identify your platform, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at TeacherCast, or of course, leave me a voicemail over at teachercast.net/voicemail. I am happy to do it. And of course, as I'm saying this, I'm looking over here at our live Facebook feed, and I see some great stuff here. JP Meyer just chimed in and said, keep up the great work. I want to say thank you to everybody out there who is watching us live right now. It really, really means a lot. We're going to be doing a lot more of this now that the babies are getting older. They're 3 years old, by the way, and they're able to sleep at night. So let's go over the first two steps again. Step one is, of course, decipher the project, identify the audience. We talked about figuring out who our audience is, where they're going to be finding our content. We talked about identifying our platform and figuring out exactly where to go with things. And then the third step here in our 3.5-step process is to identify the types of content that we're going to be doing. What type of content are we creating? Are we just going to do a blog? Are we going to be creating static pages? Again, maybe because we're doing a school website for our students. Are we going to be doing a podcast? I was recently working with a fantastic educator who started a brand new podcast or is starting a brand new podcast. And I guess in the conversation, he says, can you help me move my stuff away from WordPress and onto this other platform? Because he wanted to have a shop. And I looked at that and kind of hesitated answering, because with WordPress, it really is a system that can manage not only the content, but manage everything around the content. And it's true that you can find some great applications like Libsyn, like Blueberry, like SoundCloud, that you can put your audio podcast in there, and then it gives you an embeddable player. but there's just so many advantages to using a system like WordPress. WordPress not only hosts all of my content, except for the audio and video, of course, but it hosts all my text content, but it also controls all of my feeds. So if you're downloading this on teachercast.net/audio, hint, hint, that is all coming from WordPress. If I need to figure out anything, it comes from WordPress. So I like to have one brain core in my entire digital arsenal here, and that is where WordPress comes in. So what type of content are you creating is usually the first question I'm asking here. The second one here is, how much of each type of content do you think you're going to have? And this is really where the brainstorming comes in here. This is when a client and I are sitting down and looking at the navigational menu. Now, look, I've spent a lot of time putting together navigational menus. Some good, some bad, some horrible. But the best way to look at your navigation before you get into the website. Notice we haven't even said install WordPress yet or open Google Sites yet, but just looking at the navigation here is generally I sit down with a bunch of Post-its, and a lot of times with clients, they have big whiteboards. We just grab Post-its and we put them up all over the place, and that way you can step back and see things. And then we always do tests. We ask a friend or a coworker and we say, if you were looking for podcasts on this board, where would you go to look? If you were looking for shopping or buying a product, where would you go to look? Using Post-it notes is a great way to focus test your content and also to get a sense of where your users can be. I've also done things on these big whiteboards where I brought somebody in cold, kind of blindfolded them a little bit, and then said, open your eyes, find me the word podcast. And if they can't do it in 2 seconds, you got a problem. So figure out how much type of content do you need. When we're looking at WordPress, we're looking at posts, which are broken down into categories, and then each category has a tag. So on TeacherCast, we've got several categories. We've got a category for Apple, for Microsoft, for Google. But all of those are categorized under one umbrella tag called EdTech. And the same thing, we've got a category for the Tech Educator show, for the App Spotlight show, for Beyond the Hour of Code, for this particular show here, the Educational Podcasting Today. But all of that is under one main category called podcasts. So organizing all of this stuff ahead of time and planning out your roadmap is not only going to save you time when you're creating your website, but it's also going to be helping you out in the long run because you're going to be able to see what content you should be writing and content you shouldn't be writing. And of course, again, the last question really goes back into the first step, is how will your audience be locating this content? Now, clearly, they're locating it on a desktop machine. Your menu is going to look different than if they're locating it and navigating it through on a mobile device. And so all these questions as far as what type of content, how much content, and where the content's going to be found are very, very important conversations. So kind of just to review here, when you're looking at creating your first website, step one, identify your audience. Figure out what type of a project you're going to do here. Number two, identify the platform that you're using. Step three, identify the content that you're having. And then step 3.5. And I know it's weird saying 3.5, but the 3.5 really comes into this little secret that I have here, which is don't be afraid to start over. I have had so many projects. TeacherCast, in fact, it's on its 5th version of our website, and it's basically because I didn't know these steps. I didn't know this stuff ahead of time. I just kind of jumped in and said, all right, I'm going to redesign this website. And so the first couple of versions, it took me a while to get in here. I got to tell you, ever since last spring when we redesigned it into this very version of the website, it was nice. It got a lot of attention. But as soon as I pulled up this version here, and I'm pulling up the video on here, numbers took off, stats took off, hits took off, bounce rates have fallen. Everything so far has completely taken over because of the design of this website. Just if you're looking here on the live video on Facebook, you can notice here that as my screen goes up, the sidebar stays where it is. And that is a feature that we coded into this theme. And everything that we're doing here is completely designed. This post, in fact, I'll show you here at the top of the post. This post hasn't been posted yet. But as the time that you're going to be listening to this post will be out here. So everything on here, from the way that the featured image looks to where all the sharing buttons are, to on the bottom right here, it slides out with more stories. Everything in here is designed to be not only search friendly, Google friendly, but even on here as we get down, there's a slide share presentation about this very podcast and about this very topic. Everything on here is designed to help me as a content creator, help you as a content consumer. So those are my 3.5 steps towards planning the podcast. Now, we're going to be getting back into this. This is officially Educational Podcasting Today, episode 20. We're going to be refreshing some of the content in the first few weeks here of 2017 as we plan out ahead. We're going to be posting, of course, more videos on Facebook Live, on YouTube. We certainly want to hear from you. If you have any questions about this or other educational podcasting topics, please let us know. I always say that you can't really have a podcast until you have a website, because your podcast needs a place to be found. So looking at websites is equally as important as building the podcast itself. So lots of great questions. My name is Jeff Bradbury. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at TeacherCast, and I love it when you leave me a voice message over at teachercast.net/audio and teachercast.net/video. You can, of course, search and subscribe to us. One of the things I'm going to ask every time we do a show is to please go over to iTunes, give us a 5-star rating, give us a ranking. I love when we look over there under the education category, the tech category, the K-12 category. It is a wonderful place, and there's brand new podcasts coming out all the time. As we turn the corner here in 2017 and we head into our 6th year of providing free educational podcasts, I want to say how much I appreciate everybody out there. And please, if you like this show, or if you don't like the show, head on over to iTunes, give us a rating, give us some rankings. We certainly appreciate it. And of course, if you can subscribe to us on all of our channels, that would certainly help out. There's, of course, other great shows that you can find over here. We have appreciated our partnership with Microsoft over the last 6 months. You can certainly go on iTunes and search out the Microsoft Innovative Educator Spotlight Series podcast. You can find more about that over on teachercast.net/MIE Spotlight. And of course, on Tuesday night, we invite you to come over to teachercast.tv for the Tech Educator podcast, featuring technology integration specialists talking about all things classroom technology integration. So on behalf of everybody here on the TeacherCast Educational Broadcasting Network, I hope you learned something today. I certainly hope this show is helpful to you. Check out all the links over on teachercast.net. And until next time, keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.